Startup Grind fireside chat here today with Will Graylin. Seeing some familiar faces and some new faces joining here as well. So if you're not familiar with Startup Grind, it's a community and startup event organization that's been around about 11 years now. Started out in Silicon Valley as a meetup group where the founder of the organization, Derek Anderson, was working on startups of his own, wanted to learn from other founder stories of the successes, the failures, and all the lessons along the way. Sorry, I'm just gonna put everyone on mute, and you guys can unmute as well if there's questions, or we can also use the chat box from there. But yeah, basically started, and yeah, Will, I'll have you unmute too. Yeah, basically started as a way to learn from all the founders and everybody else that came in, and it grew from there. Now there's 500 different chapters around the world, different cities, universities across the US, Europe, Asia, Africa, like it's all over the world. So excited to connect with you guys from the Boston chapter or wherever you guys are. We're the chapter, Yev and I are the chapter leads for Startup Grind Boston. So we have our own community page with events here. I'm going to post it in the chat. And then, while we're in this virtual world right now, you can also check out any of the other chapters as well and learn from, check out all of their events and resources that everybody's offering there as well. So on our page, we do have a few more upcoming events. We have one next week. We're also showcasing the Startup Grind Global Conference, and we have a list of partners and resources, including our sponsors, Brex, big corporate credit card and banking platform for startups, as well as ShipQuid, which helps manage the whole sales funnel and customer personas as you build out your startups. And then just want to share a quick video here about the global conference before we dive into the fireside chat. And feel free to use the chat as well to introduce yourselves, meet everybody. If you want to share your LinkedIn and connect with audience members in there, or we're going to use that to keep this interactive and take questions along the way to jump into the chat as well. Just making sure I'm sharing sound here. And so this is, while it's loading, the Startup Grind Global Conference is coming up the end of February. Typically, it's an in-person event where all the chapters and startups, entrepreneurs, investors from around the world come together for a big event. Usually it's over 5,000 people out in California, and expecting it to be even bigger online this year. So definitely make sure you check that out. We have a link on our Boston Startup Grind Boston site, and just going to play a quick intro video to that here now as well. So with that, yeah, excited to kick off the fireside chat here. Excited to have Will Graylin, a serial entrepreneur, CEO of OV Loop, and several other companies he's founded, started, and been the CEO for. So yeah, Will, really excited to have you on board here. If you want to give a quick introduction before we start the chat, and then we're also gonna, as I mentioned, keep the chat open for questions along the way, build them into the discussion here, and also have some additional time towards the end of the chat for more of a direct, Q&A session as well. So yeah, would love to have you introduce yourself.
No, thank you, Jason, for having me on Startup Grind, and pleasure to be here. For those of you who don't know me, I am currently the CEO of both OV Loop as well as Indigo Technologies. And my previous 4 startups were all sold to large publicly traded companies, including the last one being OV Loop, sold to Samsung in 2015, where I spent the next 3 years becoming basically the global co-GM of Samsung Pay, helping them launch Samsung Pay for a number of years. And then in 2018, I went off and continued my startup journey with OV Loop, and now with Indigo. Prior to my previous 4 startups, I was finishing up graduate school. I got a couple of master's degree at MIT. That was when I got the startup bug, I would say, and started my first company when I was still finishing up my thesis. Prior to that, I was a nuclear submarine officer for about 5.5 years before coming to Boston for grad school.
Great. Yeah, so you knew, or like you said you got the startup bug in grad school. Before that, when you went to your MBA or master's program there, did you have an idea that you were interested in startups at all, or was this a passion you found through as being part of that program?
I think it was really a passion that I found while I was there. Frankly, I really wasn't sure what I was going to do in grad school.
Right.
And I told my wife when I got accepted into the MIT LFM program, and that she said, "What are you going to do after you graduate from the program?" I said, "I don't know, but one of my friends just got hired by this consulting firm called McKinsey, so I'll probably do that too." But reality was, I found that what I really love to do is connect the dots in terms of bringing technology into the marketplace and creating value for something that was bigger than myself.
And then, when you got into your first startup, did you have the vision of or I guess your goal for starting that company, was it to build it up towards an exit event, go the angel VC pathway, and build it into something that could be exited and you could start your next venture? Or was it purely focused on how can we scale this up and make this a success at the beginning, and the rest sort of fell into place from there?
No, it was really very organic, Jason. It was basically seeing technology that could be applied and seeing a hole in a marketplace, and figuring out how to create value by solving some real problems. And then the rest, just became a path to building that product market fit. There's definitely pivots along the way. And oftentimes that happens when you're in the search. You have this hunch that your technology and what you're building will bring value, but you don't fully know until you get into the marketplace and really dig and see if people are going to find value in it. So that journey is both exciting as well as challenging at the same time.
And how was that like initial period, that idea to finding product market fit changed from that first venture you've been in to, the way you go about starting and launching businesses today?
So I would say when I first got started, had really no idea how to build a company, and and really started with trying to solve specific problems first, and very niche like, and sometimes in startups, we have to figure out whether are we solving um, a problem in a way that we are an added feature to somebody else's product. So is this a feature, or is this a product that you sell to businesses or people that in it itself it's a product? And then finally, you know, there is platforms. So you could have multiple products, but are you building a platform that has a network effect and has a growth loop, that has a bigger um, um, value proposition for a community? So those three things, and I've seen myself evolve, from feature. And my first company that I started by myself uh, was more of a feature, a security software product that really belonged in somebody else's larger product. And so it became apparent when we delivered that value and somebody wanted to acquire us, it was very natural that was the right thing to do. And then later on, we built products, and then that product sometimes fit into somebody else's portfolio of products. Then it was also natural for when somebody wanted to buy our products. Now I'm really building a platform, and which consists of multiple products working in tandem. Um, and again, whether somebody acquires us or whether we have the additional capital that can get us to profitability and sustainability on our own. That I think less about. I just think more about just building value for our customers.
Oh, that's great advice. And then, yeah, thinking about your current, or I guess to help set the stage a little bit here, can you tell us a little bit about Indigo and OVLoop? And I know there's some collaboration in there as well between the fintech and electric vehicle, or the spaces you're working in there as well. So yeah, I would love to hear a little bit about those to sort of set the stage for the rest of the chat here.
Sure. Yeah, frankly, both of those companies is really a result of many years of journey and passion for both of these spaces. So one is OVLoop, which is really a continuation of the fintech journey that I've been on, and it's marching towards fintech, insurtech, and it's a next generation digital identity, payments, and messaging platform. So what that means is, we're in a very fragmented space right now for our identity, for our payments, for the way that we interact and transact with businesses, especially as things get more digital. So, we don't have a universal identity manager today. We're still paying with plastic cards online as well as in the physical world, and they're getting skimmed. And the way that we interact with businesses through these different channels are quite fragmented. So unlike in places like China, where WeChat Pay, really represents a much more frictionless way to interact and transact, we don't really have that here in the U.S. And so we're building effectively a next generation digital identity and credential manager for consumers. That's also a messenger for us to better interact and transact seamlessly with businesses. So that's a continuation of some of the things that I've done. And then the other passion that I followed, and I started that about 3 years ago, but the other passion that I followed has been the electrification of mobility and sustainable transportation. And I've been passionate about that for quite some time as a user for a while. I was one of the first ones to get a Chevy Volt when they first came out. One of the first ones sight unseen to buy a Tesla here in the
Right.
Northeast. And 4 Teslas later, I'm now embarking upon, building our own next generation vehicles that are much lighter, much more efficient, and much more affordable. Because right now the vehicles are just too heavy, too inefficient, and they're not sustainable for the grid and not affordable for those, especially those who are driving for us. Well, I'm talking about the gig economy drivers who are day in and day out, driving for folks like Uber, Lyft, DoorDash, the likes. And so we wanted to create something that is not only truly affordable and practical, but also have a next level of comfort and and a way that they can afford to get into one without putting down a whole lot of cash. So that's where Indigo comes in, and I took over as the leadership, as the CEO of the company about a year ago. I'd been an investor for about 3 years and sat on the board. And that company was founded by Ian Hunter, who's a prolific inventor out of MIT, professor. And so together, we're looking at how do we take the world's first, robotic wheels, and then turn it into a solution that ultimately creates radically more efficient and affordable electric vehicles.
Oh, that's really exciting. Yeah, and I know, part of the chat here and part of your thesis has been sort of building, being yourself an entrepreneur for good and building mission-driven companies. And it's exciting the missions you're on with both of those, and sort of providing access benefits, resources to a lot of people. These can both of these companies can help in various ways. And I guess is the impact, I mean, I'm guessing it is from our previous conversations, but how important is the impact focus versus the business opportunity, and creating creating and deciding which ventures either to go into or to create yourself?
Yeah, I think it's definitely something that I think about and I look at when I get myself involved. I've invested in a number of different startup companies that where founders are passionate about what they're doing and passionate about solving problems. For me, where I find that I can add unique value, then that's when I roll up my sleeves and look to contribute. So from an impact standpoint, when you think about um, OV Loop is really about removing friction from commerce. And every time we remove friction from commerce and providing, that digital identity and payments rails for easier, safer commerce, then people get more time and they have less frustrations. And it's almost like, putting grease in the engine for our economy. And if we can do that, I think it adds a lot of value for society that I think is tangible. Visa had done a study, just on simple things like electronic payments. They found that every time that a country is able to adopt electronic payments to reduce friction of commerce and transacting with cash, or it basically, you see the GDP starts to grow. So there's a direct correlation, and I think that's the same as we as a society march more towards digital. We need a new way of providing identity payments and messaging so that we can reduce friction. I mean, when you think about how our identity is being hacked today, very easily, online as well as in the physical environment, that creates a lot of friction. When there's fraud, there's friction, there's frustration, and we want to be able to remove all of that from. Well, you can never remove all of it, but you remove as much as possible using the latest technology, using biometrics, using new ways to store your data where the data actually belongs to the consumer rather than the business. And so we have a privacy policy that, and just first principle thinking, that we're going to create an identity manager that belongs to the people, the individuals, so that we can't even access it ourselves. So there's no master password reset for you
Right.
if you lose it. Um, but that's the beauty of it is you get to manage your own data, and you get to choose who you share the data with. If you want to share your data to have a relationship with businesses that interact with you. So those foundational principles allowed us to really think about putting in the multiple components. And so for the last 2.5, 3 years, I've been assembling multiple pieces of building blocks that are necessary um, for us to create this platform. And so to me, it's a long-term mission to create a consumer-first solution that allows for just more frictionless commerce between businesses and people. And we're also bringing business solutions out so that makes it easier for them to interact and transact and send bills and invoices using what's called our commerce messaging platform. And so if we can reduce the friction for businesses, then we can do a lot of good. Um, so that's one half of what we're doing. And then the other half in terms of for good with Indigo Technologies, it's about drastically reducing waste in terms of energy consumption, mostly through fossil fuel today, as you know, and emitting carbon into the atmosphere. So can we do good? And the only way for us to do good is to create breakthroughs. Sometimes you really need those breakthrough inventions. And I'm a technologist myself and a geek that care about what inventions can be applied. So in this case, our robotic wheels invention that has active suspension and propulsion built into the wheel allows for lightweight vehicles to also be comfortable and safe in terms of handling. And by reducing the weight and changing the shape of the vehicle, we can have dramatically 2 times, 3 times more efficient than my Tesla. So that means much faster to charge, much smaller battery that you have to carry, and smaller battery means lower cost. Smaller battery means less weight and less waste. And when you can have a much more efficient vehicle that are put on the road, effectively these are going to be home appliances, right? Think about our appliances. Each one of them have Energy Star ratings. Well, our efficiency of these vehicles is going to be really important to reduce waste, reduce cost, and reduce emissions. So that's the good that we're looking to accomplish.
Perfect. Yeah, and I think this ties in pretty well into one of the audience questions here from De Nunez. And basically, he's advising some companies that are starting to fundraise and struggling with creating, or some of his companies founders that come out and reach out to him are struggling to make good investor presentations. And I think, you just did a really good job of like showing the story, why it matters, that, or why your building really matters. So, what advice would you have to people that are creating, whether it's a pitch to investors or to customers, to build excitement around the startups you're creating?
Well, I think it's really hard to tell your story succinctly, but it's really important. So every startup, should have a really clear problem that they're addressing, and identifying the clear problem and the clear target customer that they're serving. Those two things is like foundational. If um, if you get that really clear, And then you get to the next step, which is, okay, what inventions, what innovations have you created to solve those problems specifically for those customers? Now you're starting to match that product market fit. And then how is it different than what they're currently using? And is it different enough? Are you 10% better or are you 10 times better? And if you could really identify that and make that super clear and simple to understand, then it makes it a lot easier for you to get the fuel that you need to, to build out the technology and then to go and sell the technology or to sell the solution.
Right. And I like the way you phrase that too. It's not necessarily, pure competition you're looking at. It's any way to replace existing ways they're currently doing business. And yeah, showing why people are going to use you versus what's already out there. So yeah, no, I think that's great advice there. And yeah, I wanted to touch quickly back on one of the other comments you had made in your value proposition on, providing the data and security side. So I know there were some big comments this past week from, Tim Cook at Apple versus Facebook on, the Apple model is really like own all of your privacy, own all your data. The Facebook model is, this is a free platform. We're going to take your data and, the advertisers and businesses are really the customers there. So I guess fitting in, how does the way people, I think that data security and privacy is sort of coming top of mind for a lot more people now than it had been in the past. And yeah, the question here is, how does that play into how you present or how you figure out the next steps in your company in the security space?
Now, it's a great question, and it's a fundamental and a foundational question of what direction that you go into. And one of the listeners and audience here asked a question, regarding how do you balance doing good with operating the business. And I would say, you start with the North Pole. You start with a direction. And at OV Loop, we identified, at least for ourselves, that we really wanted to do something that is foundationally good for the economy and for the society. So that means, we have to understand that we're moving ourselves from the wild, wild west of what we call the attention economy. And we want to move towards and contribute towards what we call the relationship economy. Businesses should be able to have a relationship with individual consumers. And by reducing friction and removing friction, but enhancing security and privacy at the same time, you can do good and do well at the same time. So let me explain what that means. So in the past, if I offer you something that that's free, and you are effectively my way to monetize and sell ads, I really don't know who you are. And by not knowing who you are, you could be leveraging the platform for good or for bad. It's hard to really create a trusted environment. So we came from the opposite direction and we said, guys, we're not going to be here to sell your data. We're not here to sell ads or to sell phones or to sell, something that locks you into our ecosystem. We're here to facilitate relationships, and the foundational that relationship is identity. And you can't have really privacy in an active, engaged society without identity. So it's almost like, you being in this country, everybody has a citizenship, they have driver's license, they have social security. And that's how you, create a orderly economy. So if we want to do that in the digital world, we need to take identity seriously. So that's why, those who join OV Loop as a trusted connected commerce community, they're basically saying, look, I control my own identity. I store my own information. All of these fragmented credentials, from payment cards to bank accounts to membership, ID, driver's license, passwords. I want to put it all into one secure place that I own. And if the consumer owns that space, then it's up to them on how they share it with people or businesses that want to interact and transact with them. And that's the first principle that that's the North Star that we're going by. And we think that that principle, as digital commerce evolved from 1.0 to 2.0, and as we evolve from the attention economy, which is driven primarily by how many eyeballs, how much time can I get you to spend so that I can sell you more ads? Whereas we're going the other direction, which is how much time can I save you? Can I minimize the level of interaction so that you can be more efficient in doing what your purpose is in life? So if we can reduce the friction by saying, hey, this is me and you can trust me, I'm in OV Loop. And on the other side, they don't have to ask you what your mother's maiden name and
Right.
last four social security and all of this, then we can reduce that friction. And I don't have to pass you my bank account and routing information to an agent that's over the phone. That today in the COVID environment, that's working from their 1 or 2 bedroom apartments, and and I don't have to pass that secure information to you. I can facilitate a transaction through a secure biometric means to make it much more easy to interact and transact. So philosophically, we start, with that North Star to say, look, we're going to take privacy, identity seriously, and then we're going to make it really secure on the payment rails, and we're going to let messaging be really convenient and easy. And not only are we going to facilitate those kinds of interactions and transactions, we're going to build that connected commerce community so everyone who's in that community can trust each other, whether you're a business or a person.
That's really exciting. And then, yeah, we had a couple questions just around, I mean, first off, what does the OV in OV Loop stand for? And sort of where do you fit into, where would you compare yourself to other companies in that field? Are you more of the Square, PayPal, or are you other stages of the market that people come in and use for transactions?
Yeah, that's a great question. So OV Loop is a circle of relationships, that trusted digital connected commerce community that I talked about. So that's the loop, is the circle of relationships, and all good relationships are foundationally built on trust, as we talked about, and all good relationships, starts, with the spirit of love, right? And to remind our team and to remind ourselves to stay in the center of love. OV are the 2 letters in the center of love. So hopefully that
Oh,
explains
great.
the code that we put into to OV Loop to remind ourselves of this community. And how are we different than the likes of Square or PayPal or Revolut or any of these folks? We are genuinely a facilitator of commerce experiences. So, and we are here to provide not only the consumer, but also the business experience to make that bridge. So we are a pure identity and credentials manager on the one hand, and yes, we have on-ramp to payment rails, whether it's card payments, ACH, RTP, which is why we acquired an RTP processor most recently. And we're a messaging platform to facilitate interactions between them. So we're kind of a unique blend. And whereas PayPal focuses, really on online payments, and they issue their own credit cards, and Square is, started out with the merchant acquiring space, and now moving into, their Cash App, and acting more like a Venmo competitor.
Right.
We're really focused on truly the digital credential manager, and then facilitating messaging in between businesses and people.
And we had a question around like if this is based on distributed ledger technology or if it's other, internal technologies you've built out and creating yourselves.
We've put a lot of different technologies inside of OV Loop. We have patented technology, including host card emulation, HCE. That's basically used for tap and pay with your mobile phone, using secure tokens and transmitting it via NFC. We've licensed back some of the technology like MST transmission, and we've invented additional technology when it comes to the communication layer of how we do commerce messaging. We've got numerous patents that we filed, in the platform itself. But ultimately, we're technology agnostic. To us, technology is just a means of facilitating the kind of experiences that our North Star is guiding us towards. And so we welcome all different kinds of tender types. Like I said, card payment rails, ACH, RTP, and then when cryptocurrency comes, we're just a way to store your credentials and your keys in the right way, and making it easy for you to use it, where people are accepting them.
Right. Yeah, I'll loop in one more question on the privacy side because that seems to be a big, big area people are excited about here. So how does the GDPR and other international regulations play into how you think about
Yeah.
the privacy and everything that you guys are building out?
It's very foundational for the way that we store data. As I mentioned, we're using technology whereby we use effectively the user's own passcodes to create a unique hash for every credential encryption that we do. So if your account, you sign up to an OVLoop account, we're going to use your unique passcode to create your unique hash so that your data is only unlocked by you when you authenticate. So, and we employ multi-factor authentication as well. We're adding FIDO as we're getting ready to launch, which is Fast Identity Online standard and the Alliance. So we can leverage the latest technology for you to make it easy to unlock the biometrics. But that data belongs to you. And as I mentioned, we can't even access it. So none of our employees can access it. If somebody hacks into our database and steal the entire database, they can't access it. So the best that they can do is somehow figure out all of your credential and hack your own password, and they'll get one record at a time. So for us, that level of security and just foundationally how we look at security is fundamental. And by the way, that complies also with the laws that are out there, because the laws are there to protect people and their data and their privacy. So how does GDPR and California Data Protection Act and what other acts that the states are going to follow or federal act to protect our data is because people are abusing it today. People are sharing your data and my data without our permission. And then, when you say unsubscribe, it doesn't necessarily mean that they've deleted your data. They're still probably able to keep it, and how they're using it, nobody really knows. But what we want to do is give control back to the consumer, so that you say, delete my account, poof, we can't access it. There's nothing we can do with your credentials and your data. And that's architecturally. You have to design that in from the start. And if you don't design that in from the start, I mean, if you think about any of these other platforms, for them to go back and rip out the guts and re-implement and have you, re-enter all your data, it is very, very hard. This is why, we look at us in creating this platform, and why we spent so much energy into laying down the right foundation. It's super important. So great question.
And then, going off of that, you're really passionate about sort of all the areas you described and how you're, changing the way we do business, and creating an impact on the world. When you look to build out, whether it's co-founders, employees, other team members you have on board, what do you look for in finding that same passion in everybody that you work with?
Definitely the word passion that you used is appropriate. I think without the right level of passion, it's hard to solve hard problems, and it's hard to get out of bed and stay up late at night and be able to plow through and tackle challenges that come in front of you, and have that never give up attitude. So I definitely look for passion. But beyond passion, there's this level of self-awareness that I think is really important, and an attitude for constant and never-ending improvement, for learning, and just having that attitude. And I say this to my kids as well, and it's something that I'm trying to apply even to this day, which is I learn to serve, and I'm on that constant learning curve to serve. And then, but at the same time, I also serve to learn. And every time I'm serving, it's an opportunity for me to learn. So that loop, that outer circle that we talked about with OV inside, and that's part of our logo. I think about this loop of learn to serve, and then serve to learn, and learn to serve, and serve to learn. And it's a mindset that if we can find people that have that mindset, that they're mission driven, and that they're going to be thinking out for the team and the mission rather than just themselves. And very often, we can all get caught up in, woe is me, why me, and what about me, and my ego versus somebody else's ego. And that's something that we really, I try to stress within the organization. But it's hard to pull off, to build that kind of a culture. But nonetheless, we still have to strive towards it. And it starts with ourselves, frankly. If we can't walk the walk, it's going to be hard for the rest of the team to also walk that walk. But it's a journey. We always fall down. We're going to fall down, because my teammates remind me from time to time, to watch my emotional radio. And but as long as we strive to learn to serve, and then we have the attitude to serve to learn, then I think we're going to be able to overcome a lot.
Yeah, I really like that. Yeah, and ties well into that loop you keep mentioning, and it is like you said, constant learning and evolving, and just creating it better every step of the way. So yeah, what obviously a lot you've accomplished, and a lot you're building up. Sorry, a lot you're building up here
I've got
for
two
the
dogs
future
too,
as well.
so.
Oh, nice. But yeah, is there anything that or I guess, one of the questions here was, as this platform, or as OV Loop evolves, and what other opportunities do you think it unlocks with all the data, privacy and accessibility and financial transactions you can provide, other certain ways in the market, or certain segments in the market overall, that we should be looking at as areas of opportunity today?
Yes, I think there are tremendous opportunities for frictionless commerce and connected commerce, I call it, and then building out the community for that. So I think not only can we take charge of our own privacy and our payment credentials for easier transactions, but we also think that it's a way for us to use the data, and if we can use that data to opt in and to to create better habits. Number one, on our roadmap is not only building out better trust scores so that we can, minimize the friction. Am I a first-time user? How do I know this is me on the other side? Where we can build up trust over time, and that trust score rises because I've, scanned my driver's license, I've authenticated my liveliness. I'm not just a bot. I'm not just a sock puppet. And if I am a trusted party, how do I build up that score to minimize friction? How do I build up my credit score? A lot of people, we want to give them the tools to be financially literate. And how can we improve their credit score so that financial institutions can provide them with more help and support, give them the fuel that they need in hard times when they need to lend, to borrow, and offer them instruments. And then same thing with insurance companies. There's big opportunities there. How do we help improve their driving score? And we have all the sensors that we need, here. And if we improve our own driving score, then we can show that to the insurance companies and say, hey, do you have anything to offer me? I'm a good driver. And so these are all tools that we can build up with a proper digital identity, credentials, and payments facilitator. So that's the direction that we're headed.
And I just want to touch on, it was one of the early comments and questions here too, but there's a couple, or for some of the first-time founders or first-time CEOs in the audience, are there any areas you've seen that, whether it's companies you've been involved in or invested or advised, just come across in general that like there's certain steps first-time founders or entrepreneurs in general don't take that they should be focusing more on their business? So I guess any advice for somebody going about this and figuring out how to get from that idea stage to investment scale up and beyond?
So I can pass on something that might be easier to remember, which is which is my 4 M's that sometimes I share with other founders.
That'd be great.
And I would say really pay attention to these 4 M's as you're building up your business plan and you're building up your team. And M number 1 is really the market. And that's what I referred to earlier. What is the market? What is the product market fit? And is it early? Is it late? Is it local? Is it global? So you got to find a real market need and a problem that you're solving first. So once you've identified the market, who your customers are, the second M is what's your magic sauce. So your magic sauce is, it could be differentiated with technology, it could be distribution, it could be knowing your customers super well, and whatever the magic sauce is, it needs to be differentiated significantly and focus on that key differentiations over others. The third M is your money model, which is really understanding what it's going to take to build the technology, what's it going to take to sell, what's your cost of acquisition, is this a one-time or recurring revenue model, what's your projection to get to break even, how much money do you need to achieve success? So the money model is really important. And then the last M is your management. So this is, trying to find the stars that fill the gap. And your management, in fact, is probably the most important M, because you may end up pivoting, your first 3 M's, because your last M has figured out how to adapt, in the marketplace. If you're missing any one of the M's, you're in trouble. And you have to really go back to the drawing board. So keep looking at fulfilling, those 4 M's. And so that's one simple way to think about it and remember as a founder. even as an investor for that matter. If
Oh,
you're
that's a great
investing,
tip.
yeah.
Oh, I appreciate that. Yeah, it's always helpful when you can have those, boil it down to those 4 core components like that. No, I think that's great advice. And then, yeah, I guess if anybody, we can open it up in the last, 10 minutes here or so, if anybody has questions they haven't had answered yet. And, just, you can either, I think there used to be a raise your hand button. I guess you could unmute and come up to the stage too. Or, happy to continue relaying the ones from the chat as well. Yeah, so I'll give a second if anybody has a question. If not, we can continue here as well.
Will, this is Matt Johnson.
Oh, and we did talk.
Hi,
Go
Matt.
for it. Hey, Matt.
Actually, another based here in Massachusetts, down in Concord. Given your track record of success and selling businesses, I imagine you've got a lot more latitude on how you finance new ventures that you want to get involved in. Given that scenario, the question I have is sort of around: would you rather grow your 2 businesses organically, and if you did take outside financing, when would you like to go out to the markets and get that financing? Is it a matter of like doing it when you're at the equivalent of a Series A or even a B, so that you retain a lot more control and ownership? Or are you saying get money as soon as possible because you need to capitalize on the timing to get to market as quickly as possible?
Yeah, it's a great question, and it really depends on the individual. When I was first starting out as a college student, I had barely any money to rub together. So I really relied on finding angel capital, finding investor capital in order to even assemble the core proof of concepts. And today, you're right. I do have the luxury of having some of my own capital, which gives me more time to work on those 4 M's and to get it into the right place. And so both of these companies, I've put in a sizable amount of investment of my own capital. In fact, OV Loop is still majority funded by myself, with tens of millions that I put in because I believe in it. Not everybody has that luxury. And in terms of timing, whether you're in the very beginning or later, it's just a matter of how we use our time. So it was more efficient for me to apply my own capital and assemble a lot of the teams or folks that I've known to start building out the platform, because it's a lot harder to build out a platform than it is building out a feature or building out even a product. But for us to be building out a platform, it really took more time. So I ended up stepping in to help, reduce some of the risk for future investors, but at the same time, give us more time to focus on building. Now I'm at the stage where we need to start getting to scale. So I am now raising my Series C, and in Series C, we're raising a lot more capital. And I'm looking for the right kind of investors to come in and help the company grow. But whether you're in Series C, Series A, Series Seed, finding the kind of investors that are willing to believe in you and partner with you, and help coach you, because if you're a young entrepreneur, there is a lot of learning still to be done. So we got to keep our ego in check, but at the same time, there's a balance, which is don't let the wind blow you every which way, because you're the one that's closest to the problem, and you're much closer to it than, say, your investors or your board members. So you have to develop that willingness to learn on one side, but the ability to really hone in on your mission and be true to your mission on the other side. And that combination means that we have to keep that passion, that emotional radio station that I call, dialed into the right channel. And I'll use this analogy of using the emotional radio station. So when you're dialed into the right channel, in other words, you're focused on this greater spirit of love, and that's where the spirit of creativity comes from. That's the spirit of a sense of purpose for something that's greater than self. In fact, that's a definition, a pure definition that you can use for that four-letter word, which is, that sense of spirit or a sense of purpose for something greater than self. If you're dialed into that, your creativity juices come in, and your purpose comes in, your passion comes in. But if you're dialed into the other channel, which is the opposite of love, and that's the sense of purpose for only self, that's when our fears creep in. That's when our egos creep in. And that sense of purpose for only self is actually much more destructive. So our channel can only be on one side or the other. You're not simultaneously, on both. So the more time we spend, centering on the channel of love, the more likely we are to be able to listen to the right advice, stay true to our mission at the same time, without letting the wind blow us every which way. And I saw another question here that may have missed my center on love. I think somebody commented, which is, yes, we center on love, we center on that spirit, that radio channel, then it makes it a lot easier for us to find the right kind of investor. So circling all the way back to the question that was asked, I think depending on your circumstance, find the right investors that can work with you and that have the right mindset, that are not going to panic when you have to pivot, that are not going to panic when it takes longer than you thought to create the value that you need. That's going to work with you and be patient and coach you. Those are the kind of investors that you work with. And if you have the luxury and the capital to put your money where your mouth is, then that's a great great luxury to have. But always, still, I think we're going to have to look for additional capital to grow on the outside, whether it's public capital or private capital.
Yeah, and then no, that's it's great advice there. And sort of on the other side, as you're growing and into these larger rounds and later stage businesses here as well, it ties into Benjamin's question of like, really, how do you determine at that later stage if it's if new products are something, or new features or something you want to build internally, if you want to partner with other tech companies that have the solutions already to plug in, or if it's businesses you end up, maybe acquiring or merging with later, in those stages. So I guess, what do you focus on for determining those decisions?
Yeah, so I look for holes in our product, in our product lineup, which goes back to that first M number one and M number two, which is, okay, if we understand the requirements of the customers, and we know that we want to build a significantly better solution, what's missing? And some of it is readily out there. Don't reinvent the wheel. If there is something that's off the shelf that you can buy or partner or use someone else's capabilities, but they're inevitably going to be missing links. And if they're missing links, you may have to invent something really hard to solve that problem. And then every once in a while, you might even be lucky to say, hey, you know what? All I have to do is to put these three building blocks together. And when these three building blocks are together working seamlessly, I don't even have to invent any really, really hard tech. But when they're together, they provide such a better experience, like an Uber, right? that there was nothing inventive about the payment rails. There's nothing, they're using the applications together. So when you can put these building blocks in the right way, that may be your magic sauce. So whether you have to invent something or put something together, I think just keep looking for the missing links to deliver the value.
Appreciate that. And yeah, thanks for all of your, great advice throughout the chat here. Is there anything you want to highlight? Like if we want to follow along your story, the OV Loop and Indigo, should we be focusing on LinkedIn, Twitter, your websites? Where would you like people to check out and continue following your story here?
I would say you can certainly follow me on LinkedIn, and I'll be posting, relevant news for both companies along the way. We're updating both websites in the next weeks, and we got a lot of work to do for sure. But it's an exciting journey, and I hope some of you will join me on this journey, and join OV Loop and follow us. And I wish each of you who are listening, you're here for a reason, and I wish each of your own journeys, best wishes. So.
Appreciate that. Yeah, thank you. Thanks to everyone joining in as well. Also, be sure to check out the startupgrind.com/Boston site. And we have another event next week as well with the founders of Feast and Fettle. It's a food, basically high-end food delivery management company based in Providence. So be sure to check that out, as well as the conference the end of the month. And Will, thanks again for all your insights here today.
It's a real pleasure, Jason, and I wish you the best on your conference coming up later this month.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
All right.
Have a good one. And yeah, I'll be posting the video later as well.